Despite the fact that the episode of Yellowstone that aired on November 24 was a stunner, you should be thinking about what will happen next as you try to make sense of what transpired. A more specific question: what is Jaime's next step? Unless his partner from seasons 2 and 4 reappears in the picture with their child, something that is highly doubtful, he does not have a single buddy in the entire planet. I have a strong suspicion that he will be arrested, which will be a significant challenge for Case, Beth, Rip, Lloyd, and Walker, as well as for everyone else. Episode 12 of Yellowstone Season 5 will be broadcast on Paramount Network on Sunday, December 1 at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Time. On November 10th, Yellowstone made its return with the 9th episode of the series. Some spoilers for episodes 9, 10, and 11 are provided in the following paragraphs. According to reports, Kevin Costner, who plays John Dutton, will not be appearing in the second half of Season 5. More than anything else, I am curious in what happens to Market Equity's plans to construct on the ranch. This is because Ellis is the only me employee who is still working in Montana, and he seems to be the kind of person who does not hesitate to leave. Everything that everyone is talking about is the conclusion of episode 11, yet there was more to it than the most shocking death that has occurred since Lee Dutton appeared. When Sarah Atwood finds out that the state's medical examiner is re-examining the death of John Dutton, she discovers that the death has been classified as a possible homicide. She is in a state of panic as she attempts to call the assassin she had planned to kill the governor, but she discovers that the phone number is disconnected. At this time, she is in the process of losing her composure, yet she is still able to maintain her attention in order to support Jaime Dutton's fragile emotions before she storms away. After a few seconds, a car arrives, and the driver inquires about the directions to the location. As a result of the revelation that the couple had been trained assassins, Sarah is killed in broad sight by a military-style shooting shot. Previous to that, viewers were able to witness the precise manner in which Governor Dutton was murdered, and it was a reflection of how Case recounts being trained to kidnap a sleeping man. Jaime's efforts to take over the ranch are well received by the new governor, who ultimately decides to do so through the use of eminent domain. On the other hand, Jaime is out of luck because the governor is attempting to remove Jaime from his position as Attorney General of the state, despite the fact that he is not permitted to do so. This causes a conflict inside the state, which further isolates him from the rest of the population. A teaser video that was shown at the conclusion of episode 11 hinted that Jaime Dutton might be in legal trouble. This clip was shared on several social media platforms, but has almost completely disappeared, despite the fact that Decider reported it at the time. The police are following Jaime around. She says everything is going to come to a head in a very short amount of time. If they arrest Jaime, he will sing every secret our father ever had, Beth adds in response. He will ruin this family's name to sake his own. During the time that the FBI was closing in on Jaime, the official trailer discovered him shredding documents. Furthermore, it demonstrated Rip and Lloyd setting fire to his Dodge Durango. Both of these events are expected to be witnessed on the following Sunday, December 1st. When it comes to protecting themselves, one can't help but wonder how far the hitman will go. Although Jaime is a mystery, if Case is able to determine who carried out the hit, then the entire family will be in a precarious situation. This leads us to have a hypothesis about who was the one who pulled the trigger. Listeners of the podcast titled Dutton Rules will be first to hear this. A person with a 713 area code, which is Houston, was the person that Sarah attempted to phone before she passed away. Cade, a friend of Case's who is a Navy SEAL, mentioned in episode 10 that a crew in Houston would have been able to do the task. In addition, he was coming back from a mission that required him to wear black attire, move stealthily, and work with large firearms. There has been an increase in the likelihood that Cade McPherson is the person responsible for the death of John Dutton. If this is indeed the case, then Case will be confronted by a friend before the conclusion of this series. On Yellowstone, the most satisfying deaths were those that occurred. On this show, the villains who were responsible for the torture of John Dutton and his family always met a horrific end. A list of the 10 most spectacular death sequences from seasons 1 through 5 is shown here. Fred Meyer's Season 1 Episode 4, The Long Black Train. Although the train station is a significant element of Yellowstone's folklore, we have only witnessed 2 or 3 modern-day folks passing away there. This is the most amusing aspect of the railroad station. Some of the characters from Season 4 include Fred Myers and Chester Spears. Recall that Chester was a participant in the planning and execution of the assault on the Duttons. Every other scenario that took place in Yellowstone was either a flashback or Jaime throwing his deceased father over the brink of the cliff. While that particular scenario does make it onto this list, it is by no means the most important one. The fight that Fred had with Jimmy led to his termination from his position as a bully. Because he is so knowledgeable, Lloyd and Rip have come to the conclusion that he must proceed to the train station. S2E10, Sins of the Father, is the 9th episode of the Malcolm and Teal Beck. Case Dutton was responsible for the death of Teal Beck at the conclusion of Season 2. Although both Beck brothers are currently ranked 9th, these individuals were the most formidable villains in the history of Yellowstone, yet their deaths were not particularly impressive. When you saw old Teal sitting on the toilet pleading for some dignity, you couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Instead, Case fires a shot at him. The passing of Malcolm Beck was a little more interesting. During a situation that we will discuss in a moment, he proved to be the alpha brother, and he caused Beth Dutton a great deal of trouble. In addition to that, he abducted John Dutton's grandson. During the big shootout, John Dutton and his crew were looking for Tate, and JD stopped Malcolm as he was trying to run. If you remember correctly, this is what happened. In the night sky, he passed away. S2E10, Sins of the Father by Dan Jenkins is tied for 8th place. Although Dan Jenkins turned out to be a decent human being in the end, he was a real pain in the rear during both the first and second seasons of the show. Among the many ethical issues that are brought up by this show, the moment in which he dies is the most prominent one. Although Dan was a member of the Dutton family, might we define him as a villain? In all honesty, all he desired was to construct alongside the Duttons. However, after a few mistakes, he was responsible for a collision that resulted in the death of John Dutton's horse at the very beginning of Yellowstone. One could argue that John Dutton was the antagonist, since he took extreme efforts to safeguard his property. Sheriff Donnie Haskell, 2nd season, Episode 8, No Kindness for the Coward, ranks 8th. It was difficult to understand Donnie Haskell as a character. His tragic away at the end of Season 4 following a failed attempt to rob a restaurant was obviously upsetting. Nevertheless, it is important to keep in mind that he had previously worked for the Beck brothers and had made a concerted effort to set up Rip after he had shot that grizzly bear. The real-life reason that Sheriff Haskell passed away was so that actor Hugh Dillon could devote his attention to the play Mayor of Kingstown, which he and Taylor Sheridan had originally developed. 6. Blake and Ray, Season 2, Episode 9, Enemies by Monday. At last, these two drug addicts got what they deserved, and it was a wonderful sight to behold. Here is an example of a death that was not particularly significant, or even all that necessary, yet it was a very satisfying experience. They are known as Blake and Ray, and you may recall that they were responsible for the death of Dirk, Jimmy's grandfather. This event was a significant turning point in Jimmy's character. He had gone through a lot up until that time, so when he got his revenge, stole his belt buckle back, and helped blow up their trailer, everything felt like it was starting to come together. The 10th season episode of Grass on the Streets and Weeds on the Rooftops features Garrett Randall. There is a wide range of emotions here. When the man who was responsible for a terrible attack on the Dutton family is suddenly much more sympathetic than any of the Duttons, what exactly is the difference between good and evil on the show? In spite of this, he behaved in such a terrible manner. Garrett was Jaime Dutton's biological father, and after a multi-season investigation into who was responsible for the attack that brought the 3rd season to a halt, they discovered that it was Garrett. On the other hand, he has Jaime's attention at this time and is beginning to persuade him that the family he was raised with does not love him. That is, until Beth uses Jaime as a blackmail target. Goodbye, Garrett. 4. Robert Long, Season 1, Episode 1, Daybreak. As far as we can tell, Robert Long was the first individual to perform the Duttons' dirty work and end up being killed. Despite the fact that he was Monica's brother, he was extremely cruel to Case. As a result, the youngest Dutton feels that he is getting his revenge by shooting him in order to avenge the death of his brother. Wade Marrow, Season 3, Episode 9, Meaner Than Evil. The character of Wade Marrow was a real pain in the rear during the 3rd season of Yellowstone. With the intention of intimidating Tita and Colby and generally harassing the Duttons, the elderly ranch hand hires guys to do so. It has come to light that Wade was working for the individual who will be the next one. Rick receives instructions from John to take care of it, but first he has to get the brand that is on Wade's chest back. I can confirm that it was just as horrible as it seems. Afterwards, Rip hangs Walker after he has been given the honors. 2. Rourke Morris, Season 4, Episode 1, Half the Money. For the time being, this was an incredible moment, and even though the passage of time has made it possible for fans to find flaws in the reasoning, it is still cool. During his time at Market Equities, Rourke Morris employed Wade Marrow to engage in antagonistic behavior with the Duttons. As soon as they realize this, Rip runs for him with a rattlesnake that is hidden inside of a cooler. Behind Us Only Grey is the 8th episode in Malcolm Beck's Masked Men Season 2. The most violent play that the Beck brothers ever played was sending 2 masked men to torture, rape, and ultimately kill Beth Dutton. This play was even more aggressive than the kidnapping of Tate. In a fortunate turn of events, she sends Rip a text message of distress just as they arrive. It is a horrifyingly dark sequence that lasted for an eternity in real time, but just when it appears that Beth is no longer a possibility, Rip bursts into the office and kills the individual who is pictured here. Beth had already fatally wounded the other individual. After that, he tells Beth that he loves her in the way that she had always imagined he would. This article contains 2 interesting items of trivia. Domenic Lombardozzi, best known for his role as Chicky in Tulsa King, is the actor depicted in the picture. He has appeared in a wide variety of films and television shows. As a second point of interest, during the strike that was going on between the Screen Actors Guild and the Hollywood Writers Guild, CBS drew underpants on the naked bodies of the deceased men who were hanging outside of Beck's house.